This is what I call the backbreaker, folks. So if Asharis or anybody who listens to this has a bad back, be careful.
28. فالمقروء هو كلام الرب الذي قال لموسى إنني أنا الله لا إله إلا أنا فاعبدني. Says when you recite the Quran, what you're reciting is the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just like Allah said, إنني أنا Allah, indeed I am Allah, there is no deity but me, فاعبدني, so worship me. إلا المعتزلة. He says, except the Mu'tazila, they do not say this. فإنهم ادعوا, they claimed أن فعل الله مخلوق. They claim that the fi'l of Allah is created. وأن أفعال العباد غير مخلوقة. That the actually
Oh,
af'al of the
man.
ibad of the creation of Allah, they are uncreated. Meaning that the belief of the Mu'tazila is that the person, you as a slave of Allah, you create your own actions. Your actions are not a creation of Allah. وهذا خلاف علم المسلمين. He says this is in opposition to what the Muslims know to be true.
Okay, so listen what he said. He said this is a quote from Imam Bukhari. Imam Bukhari says that what the Mu'tazila believe is that they say the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are created, are makhluk, and that the actions of the human being are not created, right? Are not makhluk. And then he says, Imam Bukhari says, this is in opposition to what the Muslims believe. This is in opposition to what the Muslims believe. Now, what Harun Kanj does is he focuses on the second part where the Mu'tazila say that the actions of the human being are not created. And he says, yeah, look, that's in agreement with what the Ash'aris believe, because we believe that the actions of the human being are created. Well, yeah, of course, we believe that the actions of the human being are created. So on that, no problem. But what about the first part, where Imam Bukhari says the Mu'tazila believe that the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are makhluk, are created? And he says this is in opposition to what the Muslims believe. Now, who believes that? Who believes, besides the Mu'tazila, that the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are created? The Asharis. They believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's actions are his effects, and his effects are creation itself. So his actions are created. They're explicit about this. This is what they believe. That's why they don't believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's actions subsist in his essence, because nothing that's created can subsist in his essence. That's why they don't believe that the acts are sifat of his. They don't actually subsist with him. They are the creation itself. So when he says, and this is why it's the backbreaker, when he says that Imam Bukhari quotes or is referencing the Mu'tazila, and they believe that the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are created, and this is what, in opposition to what the Muslims say, what the Muslims believe. Well, who also believes that? The Ash'aris do. So you're directly against Imam Bukhari on this position. And why am I saying now? I'm going to play it and show you how it's also proving that kalam, he sees the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is an act, is an act. Why? Because why would he be bringing this after he mentions kalam right in the same paragraph? What's the connection between the
Exactly.
two?
That's what
What
I wanted to ask you to play it again, that last part again, because it's just very explicit.
exactly? Yeah,
Yeah.
I sent you that earlier, Abdul, but you were busy. You didn't see that. This is why I actually recognized this even further when I was listening back to it. I said, wow, there's also another thing. He's not just proving, right, that the acts of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala must be uncreated, because he's saying if the Mu'tazila believe the actions of Allah are created, and this is in opposition to what the Muslims believe, then Imam Bukhari is saying that the Muslims believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's actions are not created, right? They're not created. But he notice when he is presenting that, he is presenting that directly after he mentions kalam Allah, and he gives a quote from what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to Musa alayhi salam when he spoke to him, right? He's bringing that directly after, meaning that he sees that as an action. Because if he didn't see that as an act of speech, then we would say, hold on a second, Imam Bukhari, what does this have to do with anything? What is the idea of the Mu'tazila's belief of the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being created have anything to do with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaking. If his speech is not an act, it's an eternal sifa which subsists in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's essence, then it has nothing to do with the discussion over actions of Allah and whether they're created or not. You see? So he's clearly linking them together and showing you that the speech, the kalam Allah in this instance, is an action. Okay, let me play it again.
It says, except the Mu'tazila, they use the kalam of, we won't get into that mess, of the Jahmiyyah. Okay? They're not as extreme as the Jahmiyyah, but they consider it as a deviant sect. And the ulama differed whether they are out of the fold of Islam or not. We won't get into that masala. Anyways, he says on page 128, فالمقروء هو كلام الرب الذي قال لموسى إنني أنا الله لا إله إلا أنا فاعبدني. Says when you recite the Quran, what you're reciting is the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just like Allah said, إنني أنا الله, indeed I am Allah, there is no deity but me, فاعبدني, so worship me. إلا المعتزلة. He says, except the Mu'tazila, they do not say this. فإنهم ادعوا, they claim أن فعل الله مخلوق. They claim that the فعل.
Okay, so notice how he's connecting them right after. Imam Bukhari is connecting these together. You have to understand this point is very important, guys.
الرب الذي قال لموسى إنني أنا الله لا إله إلا أنا فاعبدني. Says when you
No,
recite the
Jake,
Quran, what
I
you're
advise play it
reciting
again.
is the
Play
kalam of Allah
a
subhanahu wa
third
ta'ala.
time, if
Like
possible.
Allah said,
Just that
إنني
part.
أنا الله 28. فالمقروء,
From the beginning.
they consider it as a
No,
deviant
this is
sect.
good.
Right
This is
here.
good.
And the ulama differed whether they are out of the fold of Islam or not. We won't get into that masala. Anyways, he says on page 128, فالمقروء هو كلام الرب الذي قال لموسى إنني أنا الله لا إله إلا أنا فاعبدني. Says what?
Listen what he said. When he's speaking about kalam Allah, what is the example he's giving? When he spoke to Musa alayhi salam, that kalam, that's what he's saying. And he's relating that, Imam Bukhari is relating that to the Qur'an itself, right? Because why? They're both kalam Allah. The Qur'an is kalam Allah, and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke to Musa alayhi salam was also his kalam. So he's linking them together.
When you recite the
And
Quran,
what's being sorry, pause. Sorry. And what's being denied here? So what's the claim he is basically critiquing or refuting is the Mu'tazili position that the maqru', that what's being recited, is not kalamullah in the way we affirm it, that it's a attribute of Allah. Because remember, they say it's kalamullah. The Mu'tazila say it's kalamullah. But what they mean by it, the type of idafa they express this with, is that it is the kalam of Allah in the same way, let's say, like the bayt of Allah is the baytullah, right? Is that idafa of, like, let's say, ownership, okay? So it's created by Allah. But then what Imam Bukhari is saying here is that, no, our position is that what's being recited, these words, is kalamullah, right? Now, what he's gonna go on to say is supposed to affirm what? It's supposed to critique what? Critique the claim that no, this is not an attribute of Allah. And then he instantly says, except for al-Mu'tazila, because for them the acts of Allah are created, so it's not an attribute of Allah. So that's explicitly Imam Bukhari saying that it is an act. The maqru is an act that subsists in Allah's essence. By subsists in Allah's essence, all we mean is an act performed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so let me just finish playing this.
We won't get into that masala. Anyways, he says on page 128, فالمقروء هو كلام الرب الذي قال لموسى إنني أنا الله لا إله إلا أنا فاعبدني. Says when you recite the Quran, what you're reciting is the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just like Allah said, إنني أنا الله, indeed I am Allah, there is no deity but me, فاعبدني, so worship me. إلا المعتزلة.
So the only people who differ with this are the Mu'tazila, according to him. Now watch how he links it.
He says, except the Mu'tazila, they do not say this. فإنهم ادعوا, they claim أن فعل الله مخلوق. They claim that the fi'l of Allah is created.
So they claim that the act of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is created. Well, what does that have to do with anything? If when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke to Musa alayhi salam, right? If that was not an act of speech, then why is Imam Bukhari bringing this? Why is he bringing it? He's bringing it because he is telling you it is an act of speech, and that act of speech is not created. It subsists with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He actually spoke it, and his speech is uncreated. And it's an act. That's why he's telling you the Mu'tazila reject it, because they say that the acts of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are created. So if it's an act of speech, then it must be created, because all of his actions are created. That's what he's telling you.
وأن أفعال العباد غير مخلوقة. That the actions, the af'al of the ibad, of the
And then he goes on to tell you, and the actions of the human being, of the servants, they are created, which we agree with, no problem.
creation of Allah, they are uncreated, meaning that the
Sorry, he says that the Mu'tazila say they're uncreated, and we say that they are created.
The belief of the Mu'tazila is that the person, you as a slave of Allah, you create your own actions. Your actions are not a creation of Allah. وهذا خلاف علم المسلمين. He says this is in opposition to what the Muslims know to be true.
And this is in opposition to what the Muslims know to be true. What is in opposition to what the Muslims know to be true? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his actions are created. This is what the Mu'tazila say, right? Not just the part about the actions of the human being being uncreated. Yes, of course. But also, they say that the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are created. And this is in opposition to what the Muslims believe. This is what Imam Bukhari is saying. But who believes that? The Asharis believe that. And this is showing that they are not in line with the Aqeedah of Imam Bukhari. Very clearly. This is why I say it's the Backbreaker. I don't understand how Harun Kanj quoted this and he thought somehow it's supporting his view. I really cannot even fathom it. Okay? So it's very clear. Imam Bukhari is saying that the Mu'tazila believe the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are created. This goes against what the Muslims believe. Therefore, we believe, along with Imam Bukhari, that the actions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are not created. And he links that to the discussion of Kalam Allah and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaking to Musa alayhi salam. That his speech, when he spoke, was an act of him speaking, and it's not created. This is very clearly what he's saying, and the Ash'aris do not believe that. Okay, I think that's enough. I don't know if you have anything else to add on that, Abdu.
I just need a second. Yeah.
Yeah, because one point is, I mean, I can continue playing after that, because then he actually mentions Imam Bukhari saying, well, this is the problem with the people who don't understand this. It's because they don't understand Arabic. And then we have Harun Kanj mentions this statement and says, yeah, you see, this is why these Salafis get it wrong, because they don't understand Arabic and blah, 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 going on and on. When he didn't even understand what he just read was refuting his position directly. That's the irony in it. You see? I don't know if you're back,
Yeah.
Abdu.
Yeah. I mean, I still need a second, but then I just honestly, I do not understand how Brother Harun brought that passage forward. In his attempt to try to prove that the Aqeedah of Imam Bukhari is in line with Ash'ari. That's I don't get it. Maybe I need a second. I don't know. Just need to
Yeah,
digest
I'm not sure either.
the clip. But I actually do need a second.
Okay, inshallah. Yeah, I'm going to play the rest while you're waiting. It's like another minute, and then maybe you'll be ready by then.
إلا من تعلق من البصريين بكلامي سنسويه كان مجوسيا فادعى الإسلام فقال الحسن أهلكتهم العجمة. Another important statement that he makes here, which falls on the Salafis, the modern day Salafis, more than it does on the Ash'ari. Al-Hasan al-Basri rahimahullah ta'ala, he says regarding the deviant sect that arose very early on, the Jahmiyyah and the Mu'attila and the Mu'tazila, he says أهلكتهم العجمة. What destroyed them was their ujma, they did not have complete comprehension of the Arabic language. They had a deficiency in their Arabic, so that caused them to deviate, and they became destroyed as a result. Now, if you look at the Imam of the Ash'ari, from Imam Abu al-Hasan down, They will all
Wait,
be
Jake,
all
is this
A'imma of
being
law,
said in the same
the
clip?
greatest
Is
works
this
in
a
the Arabic
continuation of
language.
what you're
Yes,
playing?
yes, it's a continuation. It's a direct continuation
I mean, the
from right
irony.
after.
Okay,
That's what I'm
okay.
saying. The irony is he's saying the problem with this modern day Salafis, and he keeps using this quote, modern day Salafi, and over, like he's using it as a pejorative. Given what we've already presented from Imam Bukhari, I could be saying, well, the Asharis are the modern day Jahmiyyah. And I could be saying this over and over again, but I haven't been doing that. Okay. The point is, he goes on after reading this quote, which directly from Imam Bukhari refutes the Ash'ari position. He then goes on to this quoting from Hassan al-Basri, saying that the problem with these people is that they don't understand Arabic. And then he tries to connect that to the modern day Salafis, right? He tries to connect that to the modern day Salafis because we don't understand what we're reading. We don't understand anything, right? Meanwhile, what he just read, the irony is what he just read from Imam Bukhari directly refutes his entire position, right? Refutes the Ash'ari madhab. So it's just so ironic. Subhanallah. Yeah, go ahead, Abdu, if you want to say something.
No, you can continue playing the rest of the clip.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really much else to play from that. I mean, he goes on, let me see.
I ascribe to the A'imma of the Ash'ari. So this statement of Hassan al-Basri, doesn't fall upon the Ash'ari. It falls on the opposite camp that is at odds with them, which is the modern day Salafis. They have very superficial understanding of the Arabic language. A few days ago, one Salafi came on here.
And he goes on to tell a story about some personal story about someone he spoke to. So I don't want to get into that. But yeah, he's blaming it and saying that this is applicable. We can apply it to the modern day Salafi, right? Our problem is we just don't understand what Bukhari is saying because we don't understand any Arabic. We don't have any scholars that actually know Arabic who've read it and can comprehend it. Meanwhile, he is quoting from Imam Bukhari, directly refuting his position, and he doesn't even realize it. And we're the ones with the problem. Subhanallah.